That song is in our hymnal. It's written by Yase Barnwell. Having welcomed two new grandbabies into this world in the past 4 months, I've become fascinated by the intensity with which likenesses are sought in these newest members of the family. Look, I've heard said, the eyes are just like mom's and the feet are dad's. That smile is just like her uncle's on some days and like grandpa's on other days. He has mom's hair, but where did that nose come from? Human beings, most often, not always, but very often, yearn to see reflections of themselves in one another. Whether looking into the eyes of the future, the eyes of the present, or the past. And of course, it's the more pleasant qualities that we really yearn to see reflected. Today, I feel moved to focus on the eyes of the past. Given that ancestors are the traditional focus this time of year, whether through celebration of Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, Halloween, All Hallows, or All Saints' Day, but also because while our progeny, our descendants, feed our hope for the future, it is relationship with our ancestors that can most help us figure out who we are and who we need to be now, especially when faced with a present as complex and dangerous and terrifying and exhausting as this one is. Through the lens of the present, the question becomes, what curses or debts have we inherited from our ancestors that may be contributing to today's complexity or dangers? And what ancient blessings, what wisdom might we need to become aware of and be in active relationship with? It's important to note that inheritances, beyond those of money and property, can be conveyed in many different ways, including through, but not limited to, familial bloodline, national or cultural identity, or religious affiliation, whether passed down or freely chosen. Now, for most of us, it can be hard to know much of anything about the former, about our bloodline, beyond one or a few generations, in part because of the traumatic long-term impacts of things like ancestral migration, adoption, enslavement, secrecy, or genocide. 23andMe and Ancestry.com findings have captured popular imagination in large part for this very reason, because they unlock mysteries for those who have limited access to family lore, those who seek medical information or are simply curious about their lineage, are open to the kinds of surprises that DNA tests can offer. In any case, the yearning to locate oneself within a chain of love, of rootedness, of courageous generosity and invention and creativity and resilience is often matched by trepidation against discovering a legacy of pain, of loss, displacement, cruelty, weakness, or desperation. Both ask much of us. We are made of the best and the worst of human possibilities interwoven. My own explorations in this regard have yielded nothing big, no big surprises. Photos affirm that I bear a strong resemblance to my paternal grandmother, Mariana, which makes me feel a little bit better about not resembling my parents more closely. By all accounts, my European forebears beyond that were simple people, rural farmers coal workers, small business owners. There were a few teachers. I've discovered no markers for significant inheritable illnesses, thank goodness. But unlike those who claim to be able to trace their roots to Cleopatra or Alexander the Great, there is no indication of royalty or genius or heroism in the bunch, in my family, with the exception of my parents' emigration to America, which I imagine took great courage. As disappointing as my familial mediocrity is, it's also a relief, because brilliant, noble ancestry would probably feel like a lot of pressure to live up to. I did appreciate learning from a distant relative that both an artistic streak and a religious sensibility pops up every few generations in my family. Knowing that makes me feel less self-conscious about my own artistic and religious proclivities when considering my largely unreligious, unadorned kin. It makes me feel that I do belong, after all, in the larger family picture. That being true, it's also true that alcoholism and depression and questionable political alliances run in my family. Curses, one might say. I have come to relate to them as warnings, to acknowledge that they are a latent possibility. Knowing about and facing this part of my ancestry prompts me to pay attention to, among other things, the quality and quantity of news I ingest, and to cultivate healthy, self-soothing, and self-care monitoring and maintenance systems. I do not want to end up like Uncle Carole. So there are blessings and curses that come to each of us through our bloodline, whether we can readily identify them or not. There's also a broader type of inheritance, passed along by virtue of the dominant culture that shaped the lives of our ancestors and indirectly continues to inform us. As a first-generation American of European descent, I struggle to balance and reconcile the gratitude I feel for the blessing of opportunity this country gave my immigrant parents, on the one hand, with, on the other hand, this country's history of racist brutality. The blessing of opportunity for my white-skinned immigrant family is pitched against the curse of knowing that that blessing grew and continues to grow out of the sufferings of multitudes of darker-skinned people. Both are true. The inherited cultural blessings and the inherited cultural curses. They are my history, and therefore they are part of me here in the present. And both the blessings and the curses ask much of me. The inherited opportunities by which I feel so blessed compel me here and now to draw attention to the curse of cultural complicity, to learn about it, to name it, and seek in my own lifetime, however I can, to mitigate it. And why is that, I've been asked, when so many privileged others feel content to insist that, well, that was then and this is now, it's not my problem? To which I reply, because I consciously choose to be informed by my spiritual inheritance, which I identify as sourced most significantly in the choice I made to affiliate with both Unitarian Universalism and Judaism. Jewish tradition asserts, among other things, that I inherited the call to care about the oppressed and to always seek justice. It also affirms that I inherited responsibility for the wrong done others by my ancestors. Apology and attempts at restitution are unequivocally owed those that my ancestors wronged. And if they no longer live, it is owed their descendants. That obligation is a weight I feel in my bones, even as I consider the wrongs rendered my Jewish ancestors over the millennia, which are rising once again. Our Unitarian Universalist inheritance similarly insists upon an identity committed to compassion, to equity, to justice, to mitigate suffering, to facing the hard truths of the past and the ways in which those truths are carried forward and influence the present. For us, for UUs, looking in the mirror or at the family album or taking a DNA test is clearly not the end of it. It's just a beginning. The Unitarian Universalist heritage that we each claim, through its affirmation of interdependence, insists that we pay attention to where we are, to who we are in the present on the human chain that links the past with the future. It insists that we acknowledge and learn from the past in order to be more fully, responsibly present. And ultimately, in order to assure that we live our lives in such a way that we become worthy ancestors, having passed along more blessings than debts or curses. In these complex times, in which the worst of human potentiality is once again being actualized, with terrorists kidnapping and killing innocents, with patriarchal power plays undermining the hard-won rights of women, of LGBTQIA people, of non-binary people, and people of color, with capitalist greed threatening ecosystems and hastening global warming and mass extinction, it sure feels like we have inherited nothing but chaos. As if an ancient primal flaw had somehow been reactivated in our human DNA, despite all the humanizing philosophical and scientific advancements of past millennia. Discussions about whether current events affirm all that old talk about original sin or the existence of evil as an entity will have to be left for another day. For today, I want to leave you with two thoughts. First, the fact that brutality is not new. Greed is not new. Fear is not new. At least some of our ancestors along the way were very familiar with it. Some generations more than others, no matter what continent they called home, some of our ancestors contributed to it, and some of our ancestors suffered from it. We cannot choose our bloodline ancestors, but we can choose not to carry forward, not to manifest those of their traits that caused and continue to cause suffering. The second point is this: the fact that we are here today proves that at least some of our ancestors figured out how to make it through all that, how to survive despite their own sufferings, how to love and nurture enough faith in the future to bring new life into the world, new children into the world. They figured that out well enough to pass along stories and songs of resilience to pass along values, to pass along rituals and dances and recipes that comprise cultural and spiritual inheritance. I encourage you to look well to that inheritance and to claim it. If we are to survive and thrive these complex times with our humanity intact, we need to learn how to bring more blessings than curses into the world that our descendants will inherit. And our ancestors just may hold the key to that. In closing, my 2 new grandbabies will not have my likeness, my physical traits, because I am a stepmother. We don't share a bloodline. But I will do everything I can to assure that they are exposed enough to my care for the earth, my curiosity about and care for others, that they will be exposed to those resilience tools that are my cultural and spiritual inheritance, and that they will come to recognize and value these as blessings that they can claim as their own inheritance. We all are made of the best and the worst of human possibilities. May we choose from among them in order to become worthy ancestors, allowing those yet to come to locate themselves through us within a chain of love, a chain of rootedness, of courageous generosity, invention, creativity, and resilience. So may it be.